Hello and welcome to the SIWI Sofa, where we sit down with some of the most interesting participants at this year's World Water Week to learn more about the array of water-related issues being discussed this week in Stockholm. And for the first time this year, we're broadcasting live online at our SIWI Media Hub, so go check it out. And for those of you tuned in, thanks for tuning in today. My name is Eric Paglia, host of the SIWI Sofa, and the name of this session is Rethink Water, Reinvent Business. And I'm joined on the sofa with representatives of three companies that have joined forces to develop an innovative tool to more precisely assess the risk of water and water-related risk. So joining me here today, we have Emilio Tenuta, the Vice President of Corporate Sustainability at Ecolab. We have Josh Henredig, the Senior Director of Environmental Sustainability at Microsoft, and Libby Bernick, the Global Head of Corporate Business for TrueCost. So thank you all for joining me here on the SIWI Sofa, the first SIWI Sofa of this year's World Water Week. And as I mentioned, the first time we're broadcasting live online. So it's kind of a special occasion joining us here today. So very happy to have you here today. So Emilio, perhaps we could start with you. Ecolab, Microsoft, and TrueCost have developed this really interesting new tool that will help change the way companies around the world value and manage water. So could you please tell us about the Water Risk Monetizer?
Sure. So, you know, I got to start with the reason why we created the tool. Mm-hmm. We heard in this morning's session that global demand and supply, there's a gap and a shortfall by 2030 of 40%. And yesterday we also heard in one of the sessions that global demand for water is growing by 1%. So we need to take action. And for businesses specifically, the action is that they're trying to manage really three risks. Physical risk, having enough water, quantity and quality to operate, as well as regulatory risks and reputational risks, especially for multinationals. And so the tool really is the first tool to look at the full value of water, because one of the challenges we found in having businesses take action is that water was undervalued. It's inexpensive. And so the tool allows us to really aggregate the tangible and intangible benefits to a facility at a site level and really monetize it in a cost per cubic meter. And so it's the first of its kind, it's publicly available, and it really drives a more context-based water stewardship mindset for any water user anywhere in the world.
Okay, so this undervaluing of water, that is the essence of the risk that goes into this.
Yeah, we find that, we're fundamentally as business people, we like to monetize things, because if you can monetize something, you can measure it. You measure it, you're going to be able to manage it. You manage it, then you can improve it. And so the tool really aims to drive that mindset, which changes behavior because you start to internalize some of those costs.
And Josh, addressing the water challenges we face today requires smart, effective, and often unconventional partnerships like this one here that we're discussing. And there seems to be quite a bit of power in this partnership you have here. What inspired you to come together to develop the Water Risk Monetizer?
I think it echoes what Emilio just answered. It was really three things for us. One is we needed a better way to think about our relationship with water beyond just the utility bill that we were paying. Second, we wanted to be able to prioritize and make the business case for a greater sense of urgency and water stewardship at specific sites around the world, which was really important for us. And then three, we're a technology company, and we believe in powerful partnerships and the role that technology can play in driving scale. So we were really excited to come together with the leading experts in these fields to both inform and shape not only how Microsoft can address our own water risks, but helping people and organizations around the world do the same.
Okay. And Libby, perhaps you can give us the investor perspective from this partnership.
Great. Well, TrueCost, which is part of S&P Global, is very interested in pricing those unpriced environmental, social risks that Emilio was talking about. So for us, our interest was really in putting a monetary value on water risks. And I think there's two things that were unique and different about this partnership in terms of the outcome. We have scalable information, and it's very practical in ways that a business can act on. So by scalable, we're able to take this technology and apply it around the world at a basin level. And the practicality of the tool is that, as Emilio was describing, it speaks in monetary terms about water risks, and that's the language of business.
It seems like you three know each other quite well. You've been working on this over some years and appearing in various forums like this to promote this tool?
Yeah, in fact, Libby and I began this journey we're on back in 2013. We introduced the first version of the tool in November of 2014, which really was focused on quantity availability. We then, in 2015, launched version 2, which then added a component to say, with the extended drought in California, a drought in Brazil, we started to see that water was increasingly at risk, and so it impacted operations and disrupted businesses, so we created a revenue at risk model, which was version 2, and then in March of this year with Microsoft, we actually rolled out version 3, which incorporates water quality as a module, so that we can start to see the impact it has to quantity use, because there's a direct correlation in terms of the quality of water impacting the amount of water used at a site level.
So this is really an evolving tool then. You're responding to real world events and taking feedback from some of your clients at this point?
Yes, yeah, we have a multi-stakeholder advisory team that we put together. Besides Microsoft, S&P, True Cost, we have organizations like Coca-Cola, Ford Motor Company, Marriott, and then some real thought leaders like the World Resource Institute, Nature Conservancy. So we really, and investor groups as well, where we really sought to get a well-rounded, holistic view of how water is being challenged to business today.
Okay. We're talking a lot about at the World Water Week about water reuse, one of the recurring themes here. I mean, how do you see the Water Risk Monetizer influencing the private sector to move towards more circular water use?
Well, as Josh pointed out, there's the challenge again is, I like to say that we have early adopters in this thinking about internalizing a full value of water to your business, similar to carbon and the great work that companies like Microsoft have done to have a internal carbon price in their organization to drive improvements in efficiency. When water's material, you have to start to think about ways to value that material asset, and that's the thing that we really try to do is take it from a consumable good that's disposable and thrown away to something that's a material asset. And so making that business case for opportunities to reuse water is needed, because in some cases reuse and recycle requires a capital investment, taking it to that next level, and sometimes the EROI isn't there to support that investment unless you look at those that full value as we talked about.
So this is really a bottom line issue more than a CSR issue.
Well, I think there's definitely a social component, an environmental component, but it has to, it shouldn't be competing with the business strategy for a company. I think for a corporate water strategy, and I know Josh will talk about Microsoft's work, but the corporate water strategy is really built around your business strategy and your business model. You obviously have existing facilities that you're trying to manage risks, just like raw material sourcing to political unrest. Those are all risks that companies have to manage, but they're also looking to grow their business. And so sometimes you're building facilities in areas where the demand is for your goods and services, but unfortunately the resources aren't. And so you have to make that business case.
All right, Josh, perhaps you can elaborate a bit more on that and give us some examples on how the Water Risk Monetizer has been used and the results that you've seen so far.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, Microsoft was really interested in a tool like the WRM to help us both understand and prioritize investments in water stewardship at specific sites. So we operate data centers all over the world, and these are very large scale facilities that we try and design from the ground up without relying on heavy HVAC systems and water intensive cooling processes. But in certain cases where humidity or temperature aren't agreeable, we have to rely on cooling systems that use a lot of water. Such was the case for a data center we have in San Antonio, Texas, which sits on the Leon Creek watershed, which, like many watersheds in Texas, is under a significant amount of water stress. So we were trying to make the case internally for greater water stewardship at this specific site, and we had dabbled a little bit, but really lacked the teeth or lacked the motivation to invest in a deeper way there, until the Water Risk Monetizer really helped us both understand the issues on that specific site, but then prioritize the business case. What the WRM tool showed us was that the price that we were paying for water in that local utility district was 11 times below the monetized risk that we should be considering based on where we operated. And so using those type of tools, we were able to justify a much deeper investment in water recycling technology that ultimately has allowed Microsoft to save about $140,000 a year in cost savings and reduce potable water use by about 60 million gallons a year at the same time. So really it's fundamentally changed how we think about prioritizing sites, how taking specific action in resiliency and water stewardship measures, and ultimately to quantify that in ways that go beyond just our relationship with the water utility bill.
Libby, you'd like to add to that?
Well, from an investor perspective, the Water Risk Monetizer provides very robust data, and it also provides scenario analysis. And that's what investors want to see. So they want to understand what's going to happen to a business using these forward-looking projections about financial stability. So the valuations that are part of the Water Risk Monetizer are sort of the bread and butter for TrueCost. And we've used them, for example, with ICBC, the largest bank in China, doing a stress test of their lending, looking specifically at the aluminum industry and using some of those revenue at risk models that Emilio was talking about. And then the Water Risk Monetizer has also been used by an NGO in China looking at the power industry and trying to understand the financial implications of coal extraction and power generation. And there's also been a very large asset manager here in Europe who's done a full valuation of their portfolio of equity investments. So we're hearing from the investment community that there's a lot of interest in understanding these financial valuations at an asset level within a portfolio.
Emilio, what advice would you give to companies and organizations looking to move the needle on their own water use management practices?
Well, I think from what you've heard, there's a framework that emerges from this work, really that companies who begin to create a corporate water strategy, first of all, need to define one if you don't have one, and then once you define one, it really has four really critical components. One is to be able to assess your operations as well as your supply chain that is really material to your business, and be able to look at how water is being utilized in those operations, what are your plans to grow, identify where those hotspots are that actually are at risk in terms of that business growth. The second phase is really to look at doing an assessment during these hotspots that are identified, being able to pick out some that you can prioritize where you're going to take action. The thing that we heard loud and clear from the development of this tool was that companies were getting fatigued with having to drive a water reduction strategy across all of their enterprise. So this is very much focused on where is the priority, and then how do you go in and start to look at that facility holistically in terms of how water comes in of a defined quality, how it's being utilized or put to work in the operations, and then what are the opportunities to not only reduce but also reuse and recycle water, repurpose water as much as possible, and then drive the reliability, drive the performance and all the aspects that the businesses need to drive in terms of continuous improvement. And then look at ways to discharge that water that, first of all, has been reviewed so that we know how much of that can again go back into the operations, but whatever does get discharged has the right defined quality that allows them to discharge it so that it doesn't impact the health of that ecosystem or that watershed. Finally, then it's about valuing these projects that you identify in these hotspots, and this is where, to Libby and Josh's point, you have to then value the risk that you've identified. And so the Water Risk Monetizer is another opportunity for us to really then build that business case to drive action at the local level. Because one of the things that we see is that there's no shortage of corporate goals. It's how does it drive local action? And that's really what the aim of the tool is.
I would just add to that, I mean, I think the beauty of the Water Risk Monetizer is really in its simplicity. Understanding risk broadly, water risk in particular, could be a very complex proposition. And lots of corporate managers that deal with water around the world are always burdened with how to prioritize. And I think the beauty of the Water Risk Monetizer tool is really that it brings together all the relevant information to not only help you understand the risk that you face, but then create the business justification for taking action. And to do that in a prioritized way has been really helpful for our company and for other companies that I've talked to that have leaned into the tool itself.
Is this partnership continuing? Are you further developing this tool or working together more to roll it out, or?
So I'll just start. We are, and we're creating a vision map over the next 3 to 5 years, and there's a number of areas of focus that we have, because as you know, water data, as much as people think there's an abundance of it, there really isn't. We just know a little bit about groundwater. We don't know enough across all regions. So building a more robust groundwater module is important to us. And then also this area of water-borne pathogens is also very interesting in terms of the impact that things like Legionella have to industry today, as well as social impact it has because of impacts to health risks. So those are just some of the areas. I don't know if you want to add anything more.
Yeah, I mean, we believe in the power of partnerships. I mean, no single company can address the broader issues of water and resiliency alone. And so, we're thrilled to work with Emilio and Libby and their respective companies in tackling these opportunities. And frankly, I think there's a lot more room for collaboration, both about how to create a greater sense of urgency around water stewardship, but then what to do about it. And we hope we can bring some technology, tools, and services to bear on that issue.
And our perspective is similar. We're really excited about how we can create these robust data-driven insights that provide the business case, as Josh was saying, to really take action. There's a lot of great information out there about water scarcity, about water discharges, but really to put things in the language of business, the monetary risk, and also the information that can be used to make the business case is really important, and I think something that the three of our companies have really taken the lead on.
Can I just add one more thing? You reminded me that I think one aspect of this is I want to emphasize continuous improvement, and the number of companies that have used the tool. We have about 3,100 unique registered users today. That number's growing. One thing that we know is that companies want to know where they are today, but also how they're performing over time. That's another aspect that we're looking at with the tool, which is, by the way, just for your audience knowledge, it's on waterriskmonetizer.com. So if you want to go there, it's again publicly available, free, and simple to use. To your point.
Yeah.
Is it a cloud-based tool, or how do you actually interface with this?
Well, I'll let Josh. Yeah, the answer is yes, but I'll let Josh describe that.
Yeah, no, it is a cloud-based tool. It lives on the Microsoft Azure cloud. So the data that you upload to the tool itself is secure, and all the privacy considerations have been made about how data itself is protected there. But really, the power of it is the data that has already been made available to inform the relative risk that you face based on the context that you bring. So you tell us a little bit about the how you operate at a specific facility, say in San Antonio, Texas, and what the tool will deliver then is all the context about why you should be how you should factor and what you should factor in relative to the risk that you face.
I often say that one of the hard things about creating these tools Josh is describing its simplicity, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of data that's been knit together in a way that makes sense for any business at any water basin around the world. And that's part of the partnership that delivered on that promise for the users of the tool.
No, it sounds like a fascinating tool and a really interesting partnership, and very happy to have the three of you here as part of the first SIWI SOFA of this year's World Water Week. We wish you the best of luck with the tool and your ongoing cooperation, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Pleasure to be here.
And thank you for tuning in to the SIWI SOFA at this year's World Water Week. Stay tuned for more episodes, and keep in mind that we're broadcasting live at the SIWI Media Hub.